The winter wind whistled through the cracks in the timbers, stirring Willow Fairchild from her fitful slumber. At 20 summers old, she had already endured more hardship than most endured in a lifetime. Her raven-black hair spilled across the thin pillow as she gazed at the ceiling of the dilapidated cottage she had inherited just 3 days prior. "Mother?" came a small voice from the doorway. Willow turned to see her 5-year-old son, Thomas, clutching a threadbare blanket. His wide eyes reflected the meager light from the dying embers in the hearth. "Come here, my love," she said, opening her arms. Thomas scurried across the cold floor and nestled against her. Despite the chill, Willow felt warm with her son beside her. They were all that remained of what had once been a family of 4 before the plague had swept through their village, claiming both her husband and infant daughter just 6 months ago. "Will we stay here forever?" Thomas asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. Willow sighed, pulling her faded blue dress tighter around her slender shoulders. The neckline had once been modest, but years of wear had stretched the fabric, causing it to dip lower than proper, revealing the delicate curve of her collarbone. "This cottage is ours now. Your great-aunt Beatrice left it to us." "But we never met her," Thomas said. "No, we did not. She left the village long ago, before I was even born. But she was my mother's aunt, and when she heard of our troubles, she named me in her will. The messenger found us just in time." Just in time indeed. They had been due to be evicted from their old home the very next day, with nowhere to go and winter fast approaching. The inheritance had seemed like a blessing until they arrived at the decrepit cottage on the edge of the forest, miles from the nearest village. "It does not seem like much of a gift," Willow murmured, more to herself than to Thomas. The roof leaked, the garden was overgrown, and the single chest in the attic had contained nothing but moldy blankets and moth-eaten clothing when she first inspected it. Morning came too soon. Willow rose with the sun, her limbs aching from the cold. She stoked the fire and prepared a meager breakfast of porridge from their dwindling supplies. Thomas ate hungrily, then scampered outside to explore while Willow set about making the cottage habitable. She had been sweeping the main room when a knock at the door startled her. Visitors were unexpected in this isolated place. Cautiously, she opened the door to find a tall man with sharp features and cold eyes. He wore fine clothing beneath a heavy cloak, marking him as someone of means. "Good day," he said, his gaze traveling over Willow in a way that made her skin crawl. "I am Zachary Thornton, steward of Lord Pembroke. I have come to inquire about this property." Willow tightened her shawl around her shoulders, acutely aware of how her threadbare dress clung to her slender figure. Despite her poverty, nature had blessed her with beauty, high cheekbones, luminous blue eyes, and a graceful form that even the plainest garments could not disguise. "This cottage belongs to me now," she said firmly. "My great-aunt Beatrice left it to me in her will." Zachary's thin lips curved into what might have been a smile. "Ah, so you are the niece. I was not informed that Beatrice had any living relatives. How fortunate for you. What business does Lord Pembroke have with this cottage?" Willow asked, keeping her voice steady despite her unease. "Lord Pembroke has been interested in acquiring this land for some time. He would be willing to offer you a fair price, enough to start a new life elsewhere." Willow hesitated. The money would certainly help, but something in the man's manner made her suspicious. "I have only just arrived. I need time to consider." "Of course," Zachary said smoothly. "I shall return in 3 days for your answer. Though I must warn you, this cottage has a reputation. The locals believe it to be unlucky." After he departed, Willow leaned against the door, her heart pounding. Why would a lord be interested in this decrepit cottage on a small plot of overgrown land? "Mother! Mother!" Thomas came rushing in, his face flushed with excitement. "I found something." He tugged her hand, pulling her toward the back of the cottage where a small door led to a cramped staircase ascending to the attic. "What is it, Thomas?" "The chest. It was making noises." Willow frowned. "Noises? What sort of noises?" "Like scratching." "Come see." Curious but doubtful, Willow followed him up the narrow stairs to the attic. The space was small, with sloping ceilings and a single window that let in shafts of dusty light. The old wooden chest sat against one wall, exactly as she had left it after her initial disappointing inspection. "It is just an old chest, Thomas. I already looked inside. There is nothing but old linens." "No, no," Thomas insisted. There was scratching. "Listen." They both fell silent. For a moment, Willow heard nothing but the wind outside and Thomas's breathing. Then, faintly, there came a scratching sound from within the chest. Willow approached cautiously, her heart quickening. She lifted the heavy lid, expecting to find a mouse or some other small creature that had become trapped. The chest contained the same moth-eaten blankets and clothing she had seen before. Puzzled, she began removing them, piling them on the floor beside her. Thomas watched wide-eyed as she emptied the chest completely. "There is nothing here but old cloth," she said, disappointed. "The scratching came from the bottom," Thomas insisted, pointing. Willow ran her hands along the bottom of the chest, feeling nothing unusual. Then, as she pressed near one corner, she felt it give slightly. Leaning closer, she noticed a thin seam in the wood that might have been a hidden panel. "Thomas, fetch me that knife from the kitchen." When he returned with the knife, Willow carefully worked the blade into the seam. With a soft creak, a false bottom lifted, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. "Oh," she gasped. Inside lay a small leather-bound book, its cover cracked with age, and a metal box about the size of her hand. With trembling fingers, Willow lifted out the book first. Opening it, she discovered it was a journal, the pages filled with a neat, feminine hand. "What is it, Mother?" Thomas asked, peering over her shoulder. "It is a journal. Your great-aunt Beatrice's journal, I think." Setting it aside for the moment, Willow reached for the metal box. It was locked, but a tiny key was tied to it with a frayed ribbon. The lock clicked open easily, and Willow gasped at what lay within. Nestled on a bed of faded velvet was a necklace, a large ruby pendant surrounded by what appeared to be diamonds, hanging from a delicate golden chain. "Is it real?" Thomas whispered, his eyes wide with wonder. I think it might be." Willow carefully lifted the necklace, watching how it caught the light streaming through the attic window. If genuine, it would be worth more than she could earn in 10 lifetimes. Beneath where the necklace had lain was a folded piece of parchment. Willow opened it with care, revealing a letter addressed to "My dearest niece." "My dearest niece," Willow read aloud. "If you are reading this, then I am gone from this world, and you have inherited my humble cottage. What seems like poverty may in fact be your salvation. Trust no one who comes asking after this land, especially not anyone from Pembroke Manor. The journal will explain all. The necklace is but a small part of what is rightfully yours. Look to where water meets stone when the moon is full. Your loving Aunt Beatrice." Willow stared at the letter, then at the journal, her mind racing. What had her great-aunt been involved in? And what did the steward Zachary Thornton really want with this land? That night, after Thomas had fallen asleep, Willow sat by the fire and began reading Beatrice's journal. The earliest entries dated back nearly 40 years, when Beatrice had been a young woman not much older than Willow herself. According to the journal, Beatrice had once been a lady's maid at Pembroke Manor, serving the young Lady Pembroke. The two women had grown close, almost like sisters. But Lord Pembroke had been a cruel man who mistreated his wife and squandered the family fortune on gambling and drink. Lady Pembroke had entrusted Beatrice with her most valuable jewels and a significant amount of gold, fearing her husband would sell them to cover his debts. Shortly after, Lady Pembroke died under mysterious circumstances. Lord Pembroke accused Beatrice of stealing the missing valuables, but with no proof, he could not have her arrested. Instead, he banished her from the manor, threatening her life should she ever return. Beatrice used a small portion of the gold to purchase the cottage and the surrounding land, living frugally to avoid suspicion. But she never spent the jewels, considering them the rightful inheritance of Lady Pembroke's infant son, who would grow up to become the current Lord Pembroke. Yet as the years passed, Beatrice learned that the young lord had grown to be as cruel and dissolute as his father. She decided the treasure would remain hidden until she could find someone worthy of it, someone who would use it for good. The journal ended with a cryptic message. The bulk of the treasure lies where water meets stone beneath the light of the full moon. Only then will the path reveal itself. Willow closed the journal, her mind swirling with questions. What treasure? Where exactly was it hidden? And if the current Lord Pembroke had learned of its existence, was that why his steward had come to inquire about the cottage? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Fear gripped her heart. Who would come calling at this hour? Cautiously, she approached the door, a heavy poker from the fireplace clutched in her hand. "Who is there?" she called. "Open the door, mistress, I mean you no harm," came a man's voice, low and urgent. Reluctantly, Willow cracked the door open to see a weather-beaten man of middle years, dressed in the rough clothing of a woodsman. "My name is Jacob," he said. "I was a friend to your Aunt Beatrice. I saw the light in your window and knew you had come to claim your inheritance." "How do I know I can trust you?" Willow asked, keeping the poker visible. Jacob's eyes crinkled. "Beatrice said you would be cautious. She told me to say, look to where water meets stone when the moon is full." "Did she leave you a message with those words?" Willow nodded slowly, her grip on the poker loosening slightly. "I helped her conceal it," Jacob continued, "and I have kept watch over this place since she fell ill. The full moon is tomorrow night. If you wish to find what she left for you, I can help." Willow hesitated, then opened the door wider. "Come in, then. But know that I am prepared to defend myself and my son." Jacob nodded respectfully and entered, keeping his distance. "You have her spirit," he said with approval. Beatrice was a formidable woman. She spoke often of her sister's granddaughter. "That would be you, I reckon." "Did she know my mother well?" Willow asked, gesturing for Jacob to sit while keeping the poker at hand. "Not as well as she would have liked. Your mother left the area young, and communication was difficult. But Beatrice kept track of your family as best she could. When she heard of your losses, she changed her will immediately. She always intended for you to have everything." "This treasure, what exactly is it?" Jacob shook his head. "I helped hide it, but I never saw what was inside the chests. Beatrice said it was better that way, safer for me. But I know where they are hidden, and I know the secret to accessing the hiding place." "And what do you want in return for this help?" Willow asked suspiciously. "Nothing you are not willing to give," Jacob replied. "Beatrice was kind to me when others shunned me for my lame leg. I owe her this much, to see her wishes fulfilled." Willow studied him carefully, then nodded. "Very well. We will go tomorrow night." The following day passed with agonizing slowness. Willow kept Thomas close, not venturing far from the cottage. She explained to him that they might need to leave quickly if danger approached, packing a small bundle of their meager belongings just in case. As dusk fell, Jacob returned as promised. "We must wait until the moon is high," he said. "There is a pool in the forest about half a mile from here. That is where we must go." "I cannot leave Thomas alone," Willow said. "The boy can come. He may even be of help. Children often see what adults miss." When the moon had risen fully in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the landscape, they set out. Jacob led the way with a lantern, while Willow followed, holding Thomas's hand tightly. The forest was eerily quiet except for the occasional hoot of an owl or a rustle of leaves. After walking for some time, they reached a small clearing where a pool of dark water reflected the moonlight. On one side, a formation of rocks rose up like a natural wall. "Water meets stone," Willow murmured. Jacob nodded. "Now, we must wait for the moon to reach the right position." They sat in silence as the moon climbed higher. Thomas, initially excited by the adventure, had grown drowsy and now leaned against Willow's side, fighting to keep his eyes open. "There," Jacob said suddenly, pointing to where the moonlight now illuminated a particular section of the rock face. "Do you see it?" Willow peered at the rocks, initially seeing nothing unusual. Then, As her eyes adjusted, she noticed how the moonlight revealed a thin seam in the stone, a seam that formed the outline of a door. "How do we open it?" she whispered. Jacob moved to the edge of the pool and reached beneath the water, feeling along the submerged part of the rock face. After a moment, there came a dull click, and the stone door shifted slightly. "Help me push," Jacob said. Together, they pushed against the rock, which slowly swung inward, revealing a dark passage beyond. Jacob held his lantern higher, illuminating a narrow tunnel that led into the earth. "Stay close," he warned. "The passage is not long, but it can be treacherous." Willow roused Thomas, who blinked sleepily but was instantly alert when he saw the hidden doorway. "Is it a secret cave? Are there dragons?" he asked excitedly. "No dragons," Willow assured him with a smile. "But perhaps a different kind of treasure." They followed Jacob into the tunnel, which sloped gently downward for about 50 paces before opening into a small chamber. As Jacob raised his lantern, Willow gasped at what the light revealed. The chamber walls were rough-hewn stone, but the floor was carefully laid with flat stones. And upon those stones sat 3 large wooden chests, each reinforced with bands of iron. "Beatrice's treasure," Jacob said softly. "Hidden here for almost 40 years. With trembling hands, Willow approached the nearest chest. There was no lock. Beatrice had likely reasoned that the hidden location was security enough. She lifted the heavy lid, and the lantern light glinted off the contents: gold coins, silver plate, and jewels of every color imaginable. Thomas gasped beside her. "Are we rich now, Mother?" Before Willow could answer, a cold voice spoke from the tunnel entrance. "Extraordinarily rich, young man. Or at least, you would have been." They whirled around to see Zachary Thornton standing in the doorway, a pistol in his hand. Behind him loomed 2 burly men with swords at their sides. "Mr. Thornton," Willow said, instinctively pushing Thomas behind her. "How did you find this place?" "I've been watching this cottage for months, waiting for old Beatrice to reveal the location of Lady Pembroke's jewels. When she died without doing so, I knew her heir would eventually come. All I had to do was follow you." His cold eyes shifted to Jacob. "Though I admit the old woodsman's involvement was unexpected." "This treasure belongs to Willow now," Jacob said firmly. "Beatrice left everything to her." Zachary laughed. "Beatrice had no right to it in the first place. She was nothing but a thieving servant who betrayed her mistress's trust. These valuables belong to Lord Pembroke." "That is not true," Willow cried, thinking of the journal. "Lady Pembroke gave these treasures to Beatrice for safekeeping, fearing her husband would squander them. They were meant for Lady Pembroke's son, the current lord, but only if he proved worthy. By Beatrice's judgment, he did not." "A convenient story," Zachary sneered. "But it matters not. You 3 will not leave this cave alive, and Lord Pembroke will reclaim what is his." As he raised his pistol, Thomas suddenly darted forward, catching everyone by surprise. He collided with Zachary's legs, causing the man to stumble. The pistol discharged with a deafening roar, but the ball struck the ceiling, sending down a shower of dust and small stones. Jacob seized the moment of confusion, tackling one of the henchmen. Willow grabbed a heavy candlestick from one of the chests and swung it at the second man, catching him on the side of the head. He crumpled to the ground, dazed. Zachary had regained his balance and was now grappling with Thomas, who was biting and kicking with all the fury his small body could muster. Willow rushed forward, bringing the candlestick down on Zachary's arm. He howled in pain, releasing Thomas and dropping the pistol. Jacob, having subdued his opponent, quickly retrieved the weapon. "It is over, Thornton," he said, pointing the pistol at the steward's chest. "You will not harm this family." Zachary's face contorted with rage. "You are fools. Lord Pembroke will never stop searching for this treasure. You will never be safe." "Perhaps," came a new voice from the tunnel entrance. "Or perhaps not." All eyes turned to see a richly dressed young man standing there, flanked by several armed guards. Despite his fine clothes, he had a kind face with thoughtful eyes. "Lord Brandon." Zachary exclaimed, his face draining of color.
I
I was just about to recover your family's stolen property. Is that so? The young man, evidently Lord Brandon Pembroke, stepped further into the chamber, surveying the scene. It looked to me as though you were threatening a mother and her child at gunpoint. Hardly the behavior I expect from my steward. My lord, you do not understand. I understand perfectly, Lord Brandon interrupted. I have suspected for some time that you were keeping secrets from me. When you rode out in such haste tonight, I decided to follow. He turned to Willow, his expression softening. You must be Beatrice's niece. I knew her, though only in her later years. She was kind to me as a child, when few others at the manor were. Willow curtsied awkwardly. My lord, I can explain about the treasure. No need, he said, raising a hand. I found Beatrice's journal in her cottage when my men and I searched it earlier. Forgive the intrusion, but I needed to understand what Zachary was so intent on finding. Then you know that my grandmother entrusted her valuables to Beatrice to protect them from my grandfather's gambling debts? Yes, I know. And I know that Beatrice kept them safe all these years, waiting to see what sort of man I would become. He smiled sadly. I hope I have not disappointed her too terribly. She wrote that she wanted the treasure to go to someone who would use it for good, Willow said quietly. Lord Brandon nodded. A wise stipulation. And what would you do with such wealth, Mistress Fairchild? Willow glanced at Thomas, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. I would secure a future for my son. See that he receives an education. Perhaps help others who have suffered as we have, those widowed by plague or war, with children to feed and nowhere to turn. Noble intentions, Lord Brandon said approvingly. He gestured to the chests. I believe my grandmother would have wanted her treasures used for such purposes. I will not claim them. Zachary made a strangled sound of protest, but fell silent under Lord Brandon's stern gaze. However, the young lord continued, I would ask one thing of you. There is a particular jewel, a ruby necklace that was my grandmother's favorite. If it is among these treasures, I would like to have it, as a remembrance of her. Willow hesitated only briefly before reaching into her pocket. I believe this is what you seek, my lord. She held out the ruby necklace she had found in the chest in the attic. Your grandmother gave it to Beatrice specifically. I think she would want you to have it. Lord Brandon accepted the necklace, with visible emotion. Thank you. This means more to me than all the rest combined. He turned to his guards. Arrest Zachary Thornton and his men. The charges are attempted murder, among others. As the guards led the protesting steward and his accomplices away, Lord Brandon addressed Willow once more. The cottage and land are rightfully yours, as is this treasure. But may I make a suggestion? Of course, my lord. The cottage is isolated and in poor repair. I own a small manor house near the village that stands empty. It would be a more comfortable home for you and your son, and safer as well. You could establish yourself as a gentlewoman of means without raising too many questions about the sudden change in your fortunes. Willow considered the offer. That is most generous, my lord. But what would you want in return? Lord Brandon smiled. Only to right some of the wrongs my family has committed. And perhaps, if you are willing, your guidance in how best to use my own wealth to help those in need. I have lived a privileged life and know little of true suffering. I could use an advisor with your perspective. 3 years later, Willow stood in the garden of her manor house, watching as Thomas practiced his letters under the tutelage of his private instructor. At 8 years old, he was growing into a thoughtful, kind-hearted boy who took his studies seriously. The transition from destitute widow to gentlewoman had not been without challenges, but Willow had navigated them with grace and determination. She had established a foundation to aid widows and orphans, using a portion of Beatrice's treasure to fund homes and education for those who had lost everything. Jacob had become the overseer of her estate, his knowledge of farming and forestry proving invaluable. And Lord Brandon had become a frequent visitor and close friend, his initial offer of an advisory role evolving into something deeper over time. He is doing well with his studies, Lord Brandon said, joining her in the garden. Over the years, He had shed the formality of his title in private, asking her to call him simply Brandon. He is, Willow agreed with a smile. He wants to study law when he is older, to help ensure justice for those who cannot fight for themselves. A noble aspiration. He has his mother's heart. Willow turned to face him, noting the warmth in his eyes. You received my letter? I did, Brandon replied. And my answer is yes. I would be honored to join your foundation's board of trustees. I am pleased to hear it. Your influence will help us expand our work to neighboring counties. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched Thomas. The boy had abandoned his studies momentarily to chase a butterfly, his laughter carrying across the garden. I have been thinking, Brandon said after a while, about something Beatrice wrote in her journal, about treasures being more than gold and jewels. Willow nodded. She was right. The true treasure she left me was not the wealth, but the chance to make a difference. To raise Thomas in safety and comfort. To help others as she helped us. And to bring people together who might otherwise never have met, Brandon added softly, taking her hand. Willow smiled up at him, her heart full. From the depths of despair, she had found not only security and purpose but also companionship and love. All because of an old chest in an attic and the extraordinary secret it had contained. To think, she mused, that all of this began with what seemed like a worthless inheritance, a dilapidated cottage on the edge of the forest. The most valuable treasures, Brandon replied, are often hidden in the most unlikely places. As Thomas ran to show them a drawing he had made, a family portrait that now included Brandon alongside Willow, she knew that Beatrice would be pleased with how her legacy had unfolded. The treasure had indeed gone to someone who would use it for good, and in the process had created something even more precious, a family reborn from the ashes of tragedy, and a love that would endure long after the gold was spent.